When I was a little girl, my dad showed me the photo that he took when he had a UFO experience with a group of people in northern Canada, just outside of Pembroke, Ontario. And it, like, as I've said in many interviews, like it lit up everything inside of me. And I was like, what is this? And like, trying to like dissect it, figure it out and understand it. And my dad would say to me, like, you'll understand as you get older. And let's be honest, he really didn't understand either. None of us still really do what it actually was. And so, his curiosity really then, ignited my curiosity as well when I was really young. Yeah. I saw something with an ex-boyfriend in a backyard where I wasn't sure what the heck it was. If it had it was like a daytime, like a comet meteor, I don't know what the heck it was, but it was flying in, but it had like this little tiny smoke trail on the back of it, but it had like a really, really, bright front that was like almost like a fireball. And so more than likely it was environmental, but we looked at it and we were like, I was like, what is that?
Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Allie, and we are back at it again for another episode of Living Life Consciously. Today, I have a very special guest lined up for you, and I am stoked to get started. Chrissy, would you like to say a quick hello to our audience?
Hi, everybody. Don't mind me. I am a little puffy mess and I might sound a little off because I have my allergies have been going crazy. And we were talking about this off the mic before we went on. So don't mind me, but good to see everybody today.
I'm gonna share those same sentiments because my allergies are acting off the chain right now too. So yeah, thank you for saying that. And for our audience, today we'll be blasting off into the mysteries of the universe with someone who truly lives with her eyes on the skies, the one and only Chrissy Newton. Chrissy's curiosity about the world beyond our own is as limitless as space itself. By day, she's the award-winning owner of VOCAB Communications, and by night, she's diving headfirst into the unknown as host of Rebelliously Curious for the Debrief. You might recognize her from shows like Ancient Aliens, Alien Encounters, Fact or Fiction, or the award-winning documentary A Tear in the Sky, where she investigated alongside scientists, military experts, and even William Shatner. She's been on the biggest stages in the UFO world, from Contact in the Desert to Roswell UFO itself, and now she's here to share her most mind-bending insights. We'll talk about UFOs and UAPs, the secret of ancient civilizations, and how counterculture and pop culture collide into the quest for disclosure. Yes, I am here for all of those topics. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you for such a great introduction as well. And I always get excited, especially to talk about the counterculture of ufology. I think it's fascinating and we live in it. I live in it every day. I'm around people, monthly or daily, depending on what I'm writing about or what I'm covering. So yeah, I love that you like these intersections as well.
Absolutely. How would you describe what counterculture is?
Yeah, for sure. So pop culture is like mainstream pop culture, what we read, what we see in the mainstream media. And then we have a subculture, which is a division or something that is outside or derivative from pop culture. So you could look at like Comic-Con, right? Like superhero stuff, like that's still mainstream, but there was like a whole comic book world, right? That was a subculture of it, but it's still derived from the mainstream. A counterculture is something that is counter to our culture, that is pushing the envelope or pushing the limits. So for example, civil rights movements were a counterculture movement. The female liberation movement were counterculture movements. Cannabis is a counterculture movement. Drag is one as well. So there's so many different. Hip hop is a really great example of one that now has become mainstream, but it for sure was a counterculture movement. Skateboarding is more of a subculture, but depending, I think before punk was a counterculture movement. So there's so many of them that we could go through, but I truly think that the ufology, or if people like to use that term, I know it's debatable, but the topic of UAP is a counterculture movement. I think we are a movement of people that are looking for truth and transparency. So I consider it not so much a subculture. Like, I guess you could say we still are. There's elements of subculture in it, but I think it's really moved into being a counterculture. And so this is something that is debated today. And I've talked to different cultural anthropologists about this, sociologists about it. And so I plan on at some point writing like not a paper, but an article on this with some other academics to really dive in of like, what is this? And I truly think it's a counterculture.
Wow, that's such an awesome definition. And so many of those things that you mentioned, I'm like all about. So it's like, it's definitely cool to know that. And I could see why your podcast is called Rebelliously Curious, because I mean, it fits the vibe. And I love that because it's like, a lot of those things like punk music or even metal music or skateboarding or drag, like all of those things at some point were like not supposed to be happening. It like angered somebody that those things were popular, but it's like they deserve their space and time and, you know, representation as well. So I'm glad that you're like spearheading this, like kudos, high five.
Thank you. Thanks, high five. Well, it's true. And I think that lots of those movements, like we look at the hip hop counterculture movement, it has changed and shaped so much of society more than we even know, from fashion to music to languages to variations of different lexicons to hair. Like it's actually shaped so many different things. So clothes, a huge part of clothes. Like vernaculars. So you know, and how we look at counterculture movements is very different than how they were looked at in the 60s. So that's primarily where it started. You've kind of got this revolution of people. The hippie movement was a counterculture movement. I believe that was one of the first. So outside of the women liberation, right? Exactly. Outside of the women liberation movement that happened in the 1930s. So I find them, it's so interesting and so fascinating. And
going against the grain, basically, right?
That's exactly what it is. And I
feel like
think
my
that
whole life has been that.
Fair enough. Mine too, right? I try to be progressive, right? Open-minded and progressive, right? And so I think that's where we look at countercultures. And I would say that I'm not going to say that UAP is fully progressive, because we have elements of it that are not progressive in our, you know, in our group of people that might not want to progress certain ideologies forward. But it's still, I still think it's something that we consider a counterculture movement. And I think we'll see become more mainstream, maybe not in the next 10 years, maybe 20 years. I would hope it's earlier, but it possibly, you know, it will be embedded one day into the mainstream. And I hope I'm alive to see that.
Same. I feel like I'm have so many questions in my head and I don't know like which direction I want to take. I guess what I'm most curious about, because I watched your interview with Chris Ramsey over at Area 52. Super fun interview, by the way. And I know that you said that you got into UFOs when you were like 6 years old, which is crazy because it's like, you got into UFOs because of your dad was an experiencer, right? And it's like most of the people that we talk to, their family is like not into UFOs at all. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of us are like the black sheep of the family because we even like entertain this idea. So I love that you come from a family that has embraced this. Do you mind talking about that? Like, do you know what your dad's UFO experience was? Is that something you can share?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I would say my dad and I really embraced it, not so much the rest of the family growing up. It was just more my dad and I. When I was a little girl, my dad showed me the photo that he took when he had a UFO experience with a group of people in northern Canada, just outside of Pembroke, Ontario. And it, like, as I've said in many interviews, like it lit up everything inside of me. And I was like, what is this? And like, you know, trying to like dissect it, figure it out and understand it. And my dad would say to me, like, you'll understand as you get older. And let's be honest, he really doesn't understand either. None of us still really do what it actually was. And so, you know, his curiosity really then, you know, ignited my curiosity as well when I was really young. So I would watch him, you know, learn about it, watch about things like about UFOs on TV, books he would read, he would talk to me about it. So, and he was so curious, but there was so much stigma around it that he didn't always talk about it publicly. He would say if there were certain friends that were around, then he would speak about it. But it was something that he didn't really champion in the full front. And he still doesn't, because that stigma still to this day exists that you're crazy and you'd be nuts. So, you know, when I was 25, I said to my parents, They have a place in Arizona. And at that point, it was in Phoenix.
That's a very cool, energetic place.
It is. It's lovely. And so my dad really loves Phoenix. So they got a little place out there and they snowboard there in the wintertime. And
Nice.
when I was 25, I remember thinking, I wonder, and I was visiting my parents from Toronto and one dinner, and I said to them, I wonder where the biggest UFO conference is, or like if there's one. And so my spidey senses, like went off. And so I remember going into the bedroom and like Googling and like looking to see if there was one. And lo and behold, at that point in time, it was Alejandro's, the International UFO Congress. That was the largest one in the world, especially in North America. And it was literally like 40 minutes down the road from my parents. So I came running out and I'm like, Dad, where's Fountain Hills? He's like, oh, sorry, my light turned off here. I'm like, Dad, where's Fountain Hills? And he's like, Chrissy, it's like 40 minutes from the house. And I'm like, no way. And I'm like, that's still right. That's the largest UFO conference. He's like, book the tickets. Let's go. I don't know. He's like, when is it? And I'm like, it's in February when we go to Arizona. He's like, book the tickets. Let's go. And so that's how it all started. And from there, Dad and I went to the conference and he looked at me and as a joke, but he actually truly did mean it. I think he was like, these are our people. And I just remember laughing because I was like, and people didn't realize that at that point in time, that conference had like at least, 2,000 people there. And I was like one of the youngest. I was like 25. There wasn't many young women in then. And so for me, it was a place where my dad and I could like flex that muscle and learn more. It doesn't mean you believe everything, but it was so interesting to hear the stories, see the people and hear the research. And that's what really brought me into it when I was 20s. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go start exploring this mystery by myself if my dad can't come, and make a real commitment to understand who some of these people are and really what this means. And so, I've liked it my whole life, but I would say since I was 25 is really when I started to dig in. And then now I'm here. So wild where the world takes you.
I love the father-daughter duo at the UFO conference. Like that just makes my heart happy. Like shout out to your dad. I don't know what your dad's name is, but shout out to him.
His name's
really
Tony.
But shout out Tony. This Tony. Episode is dedicated to you, Tony. How about that? We'll do that.
All right, Dad. No, it's true. And I love that it's something that we talk about. But people now funny will call my dad and be like, what's going on UFO stuff? And Dad's like, I'm not even sure. Call Chrissy. She knows more than I do. So I kind of laugh. So I'm updating him. But we don't even actually talk about it as much anymore. If anything, we do chat about it. But most recently, we talk a lot about world events. And that's something
there's so much going on. I mean, how could you not, right?
Yeah. And my dad's a massive history buff. So he can compare history to past to present. And, we'll look at the comparisons and differences to what happened through propaganda. So we do a lot of that. We talk a lot about what's going on. And then he'll remind me of what happened in the past historically.
Well, yeah, because history tends to repeat itself, right? And I don't know why I added an S at the end of that word. History tends to repeat itself. And I could definitely see how a lot of the things that are going on in the 2025 environment are things that are reminiscent of stuff that happened back in the day. They're just trying to rebrand it.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
Right. They're just trying to like stick a new label on it and call it something different. Even as something as simple as like UFOs to the new UAP vernacular, like that was an effort to like get the topic into a different direction, which I find really interesting because I don't even know if that worked. But you mentioned stigma earlier, and I'm wondering, like, what's your opinion on stigma today? Like, do you think it's less than when your dad had his experience? Like, do you think it's changed over time? Do you think it's still like very, very strong and in the forefront? Do you think we've made some progress? What's your evaluation of this current status of stigma?
Yeah, I would say that stigma's still here. It's obviously not as prevalent, I think, compared to what it was, in the 1980s specifically, because it was just ridiculed immensely in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s. And so I think we're at a space now where people are open to it. People know that, we have so many different inventions and also just new discoveries that we've looked at from exoplanets, right? And we understand that there's water now on different planets that we can see. We have planets in the habitational zones that are similar to Earth, right? I think there's even like the the amount of Earth-like planets, or very similar to Earth, are multiples, if not maybe potentially thousands, and at one point maybe millions, if not already. Like, don't quote me on stats, but I know that they're out there. So that, I think, on its own is just wonderful and fabulous. So with that, knowing that what's going on within our within deep space, then why can't it be possible that there be something that's potentially going on that we don't know? We're always learning every day. And I think that stigma is changing. That the question is if they're coming here or not, right? It's debatable. But I think the belief that something else is actually out there and we're not alone I think is pretty much agreed upon by everybody, by most people. The question is if they're actually coming here or not. And really, that's what's being debated right now.
So what do you think is the most compelling evidence supporting the reality of UFOs?
Oh, gosh, that's a really great question.
Thanks.
I think that we look at, I think there's tons of different evidence. I would say historically, we look at all of the data that we've seen, like from the 1800s, even up to currently now, and all the stories too that we've heard. It's funny because not everybody would agree that a story is a data point or testimony. I do take it obviously as one, but we have to look at all the other things. We have multiple witnesses. We have millions and millions of people throughout over the centuries and decades that have seen these things.
Right.
And the question is we don't know what they are. So there's something going on. We also do have the American government coming forward and saying that, yes, like there's something in the skies and we don't know what we are and we're trying to figure it out and prove it. So right there to me is kind of that smoking gun that, okay, if they don't know, I don't think it's a psyop ploy. There might be in different ways using this topic that we've seen, but in the conversation of, well, there is something, because we've heard that in the 1960s, the Robertson panel and the Condon report are a big examples in a smoking gun too, that I would point at, where it's saying there's a disinformation campaign that was around UFOs. If it didn't exist, why do you need a disinformation campaign? Why would you need a propaganda ploy, right? Why would you need a PR ploy? So, and I do understand that when we looked at things at Foo Fighters specifically, they could have been confused for different tech, right? We know that, but it still doesn't answer the questions. What was happening way before the Cold War and way before the first invention of airplanes? So there's tons of these sightings that have been happening. And so again, I think it takes an area of study of people. We have ufology for a reason, because one person can't do it. We need all of these people. We need historians, we need philosophers, we need astronomers, we need all different types of scientists, mathematicians, you name it, in here looking at the topic to be able to find out what potentially this might be if we ever do, right?
Yes.
And I hope we do. I hope I'm alive when we get to see it. And I hope my dad is as well.
Same. Absolutely. Yes. When you were talking, you made me think about, are you familiar with Dr. Beatrice Villarroel's new paper that she just wrote about the transients and how she's like filling in the Menzel gap with the things from the Palomar Observatory? Are you like familiar?
I have. Yeah. I haven't read. I've been hearing about it. I've interviewed Beatrice. I do know her personally.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's so lovely, and I love the work that she's doing.
Same.
But I haven't, and I've been meaning to talk to her myself about this and reach out. But there is, I have heard about the work that she's doing, looking at finding that there's multiple artifacts, alien artifacts potentially, that have been in the skies.
Yeah, before humans were. So it's like, what does that ultimately tell us, right? So it's like, I'm wondering, what's the relationship between like ancient civilizations and like possible extraterrestrial visitors? Because it's like, if we have like literal proof now that there were things up in the sky that weren't us, couldn't have been us, we weren't up there yet, obviously it's somebody else. So like, who is that? What's going on? Like,
the question is what it could be, right? If we're not, and I don't know her paper and I haven't read this, but I'm imagining it's not comets, it's not things that we'd be able to identify, right? Because those would be put into a different category, because we would know what they look like even better now when we would then. The question is what was happening during that time, what was coming into our, into our solar system, right?
Yeah.
So
and they seem to be popping up a lot. And I forgive me for cutting you off if I did. But she was making a huge correlation between the sightings of these things and how we were testing nuclear things at the time. So it's like, there's also that, what's the deal with aliens and nukes connection? Like, I'm always trying to explore that too.
You're right. And I think so many of us are, and it's really understanding. I think the basic premise of it is that It's like my dad would always say this to me. It's like, the ants learned how to use fire and, we gave them matches, or they had matches and they learned how to use fire. Right. So I think
Nice.
the curiosity of what we're doing and hopefully what we're doing to ourselves is observing. But I remember I was speaking to Avi Loeb recently, Harvard astrophysicist, and he was saying, the idea though that potentially if we are predators, you wouldn't want to stay around a predator planet. Right. So why would you make yourself identifiable when you know that if anything, you'd be attacked? So you wouldn't. Right. It makes a lot of sense. We are not the most friendliest planet. I think people can be, but we do live in a planet that is run by industrial military complexes globally. So right there, it tells you that this planet is hostile instantly when that type of chain of command is in power. So I think that we have to be mindful of that. But back then, I have no idea. I will take a look at her work though, because it's not I think this is a third person that has mentioned it to me in this past week. So I know I'm like, I will.
That's
once
like
I get
spirit
there.
telling you, girl, you need to look into this. Yeah,
for sure.
You definitely should. And also it's really interesting that you just brought up Avi Loeb, because I was wondering if I should ask you about him and his new paper that he just wrote about the 3-eye atlas, and how there's this thing coming to space, or coming to Earth, through space. They're like kind of comparing it to Oumuamua, but they're talking about how like weird it is and how it has water on it that's older than Earth. And like there's all this interesting correlation between like the dates that it's supposed to show up. And then that also kind of ties to this whole speculation around like 2027. Like it's just
I know it's so many things. Well, I always laugh because this counterculture has a doomsday date, which I laugh. I'm like, how many have we had so far? So who knows in the context of 2027? But and we'll see when we get there. But in this, I think it's really interesting because it's the intersections of astronomy and UAP, right?
Yes.
Like we don't see that all the time. This is the third object that has come into our solar system. The first was Oumuamua in 2017, and so now when we look at this object, you're right. We're like, why is this thing icy? It could still be an icy comet, but it's not acting the same way as an icy comet does, which is like really interesting. Again, I'm not an astronomer. I am interviewing astronomers. So I talked to Avi yesterday, and I just did the podcast that I released with him actually yesterday was about this. And we talked about the images that the Hubble Space Telescope released looking at it. And there was multiple papers saying that it was acting not similar. And Avi came back with a contrasting paper where it was saying that we have to look at the size and shape of this thing as well, because they were saying they thought it was bigger than what it is, but obviously saying it's smaller and more rare, which is really interesting. So whatever it may be, if it's an alien artifact, if it's an alien spaceship, if it's something of an icy comet that we've never seen act this way, it's still all really interesting because it's something that we've never seen before. And it's something from deep space that's coming from an unknown origin. We have no idea into our solar system. So right there on its own, except for it being ET, it's super fascinating and fun. Like, I think we should just be excited about that because we're like, wow, like we get to learn more information. We get to learn about new things from deep objects from deep space that no one's maybe ever seen before.
I know.
So, right. Which is like super cool. So for me, that's really exciting. And then, the tip of the iceberg then would be obviously if it is some form of extraterrestrial, right, intelligence. And we won't know that until they say the 29th or the 30th of October. If it decides to make this pivot behind the sun and comes directly at us, then we know that it has some form of intelligently piloted and it's on its own form of trajectory. That's like an intelligent trajectory, which is like really cool. So I asked Avi Loeb at that point in time, I said, let's just say that is the case. How long do we have until this thing gets to Earth? I was like, do we have minutes? Do we have days? Do we have hours? And he said to me, yeah, we have months. And so that made sense where I was like, okay, so we've got months. The reason why we talk about that is for the fact that if this is something that an unknown origin, this is our test pilot, because more than likely it's an icy comet, let's just say, but it's our test pilot right now to be able to say, hey, if we've got months to figure out how to communicate with this thing and figure out what it is before it hits Earth, or we can actually see it on the planets we're standing on the planet, that means that we need to be able to have a proper communications plan. And I don't think we have that in place. And if we do, well, we'll learn what it is. But I don't think we will. And that's going to be a very interesting time for humanity. But this is our trial period. This is our trial period. So, and maybe this isn't the time it's going to happen, but at some point it could. Doesn't mean, potentially. Yeah. And if there is some form of civilization that is way more technologically advanced than we are, knows how to travel the cosmos, which is more likely statistically possible, to be honest, that there could be, because the universe has been around for so long and we've been around so long that one day we will intersect with something. And so maybe that is that visitor, and maybe it's an icy comet, but it is a good test run. That's for sure. I
guess we'll find out in a few months, but I do think that you're right. This could be like the litmus test of what would happen if there really was some sort of alien spacecraft that was headed straight for us. Like, what would that ultimately mean? How would we behave? How would we react? Like, what effects would that have in society? Would the world just burst into combustible flames like everybody thinks it's going to? Or would it just be a really cool learning experience where we not only learn about like new technology and new living beings, but like even learn about ourselves through the history of where we came from? Because I have this theory, and I don't even know why I'm mentioning this right now, but I guess it's because we're talking about aliens, that like the people on Earth are like the Martians, so to speak, that fled from Mars, because on Mars there's like all these statues of like broken up, like they look like elongated faces, and it seems like there was some sort of like cataclysm on Mars, and there's like radiation in the soil, and people think that there was like a nuke thing up there. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that means there was a civilization that fled the planet, and I'm thinking we're it. I don't know if I'm right or not. It's just a theory, but.
But possibly we don't know. I think there's been lots of theories that we have come from Mars, and people have said that, or we're ancestors of something else. So who knows? I think it's all fascinating and fun to look at. But at some point in time, we'll figure out more and more. Like we're always doing it. Like every day we're how fast has science picked up. Since the the past 60 years, we've had the most technological advances that before the past 60 years, it would take at least 100 years to even get one technological advancement. We've had like hundreds in the past 60 years. So we're moving at an incredible rate, and we're going to keep moving at an incredible rate. And that can be really scary, but it also means that we're going to learn a lot of things about who we are and maybe where we came from.
Sure. That's a great point to bring up, because like if we're making these leaps into shorter jumps as far as like how much we can learn in a certain amount of time, I mean, I would love for us to learn faster. And I'm thinking of like Greer and his like documentary, I think it was called The Lost Century, where in it like 10,000 times he says that if like 0-point energy technology was released, we could like literally revolutionize everything about what we do like overnight. Like overnight,
change the world
would be completely different. And I don't know, you made me think of that point when you said that.
Well, it's true. It's how we utilize and how we harness energy. That's one thing we're not very good at. And who knows, like we might be closer than we think. We don't know. But at this point in time, it's something that we haven't used globally. Right. And it is important for us to understand. And we're still looking at, when we look at UAP, we don't understand their propulsion systems, right? Like it's baffling to us. And that's energy, right? How is energy expended? So, I think as we get closer to that and understanding what does that mean, and understanding what the heck is what is gravity for us outside of keeping us on this earth, and what else how can we harness it properly? Sure. I just think that it's going to be a very interesting time, but I just hope that when I'm in my 80s, I get to sit back and look at everybody else podcasting or whatever they might be doing. Who knows at that point in time, and look back and be like, wow, it's really wonderful. I was at a point in my time in my life, we were in the beginning of all these questions, and some of them have been answered and some of them haven't, but I'm just happy I've been a part of the ride.
Yeah. I don't know if I've thought about it like that before, but I agree with your sentiments because I mean, I'm doing the same thing on a much smaller scale compared to you. But like, we're having these conversations. We're taking things that were considered taboo or, highly stigmatized. Like your dad said, he didn't even want to talk about it. Like, but here we are online, like putting it out to the masses. I mean, like, I feel like we're brave for doing that. So good. Again, high five to us, like, look at us with this girl power, right?
I agree. I'm like, I don't think it doesn't matter how big a podcast is or I think it's important if you're curious and people want to know and you're trying to do your best to understand something. And it's like the most, if it's fact checked as much as possible and you're looking at these things and you're going through academics and you're sharing that information, it's important. It's important. It's important we try to fact check as much as possible. People make mistakes. We all do, but we have to be answering questions because, and the other generations didn't have a chance to do this and we do. So we should be able to use that power.
Yeah, I feel
do
like
it in the best way possible, right?
Sorry.
We need to harness our power in the best way possible so that we're not misleading people, but we're also, still trying to ask questions that not everybody was allowed to ask before, right? Especially women, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Even being able to do this,
I know.
Before we wouldn't have been allowed. So
for real, that's not even a joke. I mean, we're still fighting to have sovereignty over our bodies, but that's another topic.
For sure. And very true. And to be honest, like when I was at an observatory in Wisconsin, I went to a 1987 observatory that opened, I believe it was 1989 it opened or 1987, still old as heck.
Yeah.
And I went into it and it was beautiful. Like Einstein walked the halls, Carl Sagan's walked those halls. Wow. The observatory was exactly the same way it looked from the from 1879. It was stunning and it still operated the same with a little like paint touch up and like a little bit of buttons to move things in the 1960s. But really the telescope was pretty much exactly the same. But the interesting thing I would say when we're talking about women were not allowed to look through the telescope. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was only men. And so in multiple observatories. And so in Yerkes Observatory, that's in Wisconsin, women were allowed to look through the telescope because back in the day, women were only allowed to do math calculations. They weren't allowed to discover or find things. Only men were. And so now, and Yerkes changed that immensely where women were able to do both. They were able to do math equations, but they were also able to look through the telescope and discover and observe things. And so look how long it took. And it was one observatory out of many in North America. Sad.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice to know that, we have come this far where we have that ability to even talk about things that we're interested in with each other.
For sure. And I'm glad that we got to highlight Dr. Beatrice Vieira-Wells' work because look at her doing the damn thing, right? I mean, she's killing it out there. So I love that. Yeah, it's it's one counterculture of female liberation movement has now emerged with others. And so, which obviously girls and aliens, my two favorite things. Yay.
Fair enough.
Awesome. Okay. So I wanted to ask you what's your take on the current state of disclosure? And I know that some people define disclosure differently. So I guess I'll ask you to start by what's your definition of disclosure and then talk about where you think we're at in terms of achieving that.
Yeah, it's a great question too. I think that disclosure, I guess for some people, it means like, ultimate knowing that everybody knows and agrees that UAP are here or something, NHI is here related, right? And the government has confirmed that, and we have disclosure, right? And it's been agreed upon through multiple governments around the world, and it's something that will not be discredited. It is agreed upon, and it just becomes a fact, right? I think that is what disclosure is, in my perspective.
Okay.
I don't know I think we're always going to be in a form of evolving disclosure. So I think that once we learn and we say that NHI are here, or if that's the case, or if, obviously UFOs exist. We've heard that from the American government that we don't know what these things are, but they're not saying that they're alien. They don't know what they are. And we don't know what they are. So I think there's always going to be this evolution of what disclosure is, because once we learn one thing, I think we're going to want to fight and learn more about like, well, where did it come from? And like, I think it might be a consistent involvement in championing that to find out truth and transparency around this. I hope that's not the case. But I do find that we are in a form of a soft disclosure now. I think that if not saying I believe everything the government says, but we've looked at governments around the world. I'm Canadian. We've seen our UFO records have been released publicly. We've seen the United States. We've seen Australia. We've seen Germany. We've seen all these countries around the world that have released their UFO data and have said, take a look at it, right? America, not so much. That's been way more confidential. But with that said, I think that it's interesting for us to look at it because that is a form of soft disclosure, right? There's something here, take a look at it and be able to analyze it. So I think we are. And if you want to believe the American government when they're saying that we have UAP or not, or that's sorry, not have, that we know that we don't know what this is or not. If you believe that this is in a PSYOP program, right? Then I think then we're in a soft disclosure. I just don't think we're in a big D disclosure, which is, could happen in November potentially. We don't know, right? With Avi Loeb speaking about Three Eye Atlas, but even if that's not the case, I think big D disclosure would be something where we see a craft and people are saying like, like there's nothing you can't deny it. It's there. And so I think we're in this, what people like to call little D disclosure, which I laugh. It's a very old term, but it's a term I know. It's
no, I love that you say that because I'm here for that BDE, man.
Yeah. Well, I was laughing because of the little D disclosure is like kind of what we're living through and what people have always wanted. We've wanted the government to admit something. We wanted because for years when I was younger, that wouldn't even have happened. So now we're at that point. So, we're never happy with what we get. Let's be honest. So I'm happy that we're here where we are. Yeah, we're happy. I'm happy that we're here where we are. But now the question is, how much does the American government know? Are NHI here? If they are, and the government does know that, what do they know? Why are they holding it from us? And what do they know about energy? What do they know about advanced technology? So if that is the case, then and if the American government or governments around the world are hiding all of this, it would be the most horrific thing that has probably happened to humanity.
Full stop.
Yeah, because we'd want to know. How would you not? Sure. Yeah, it's like saving so many people's lives with the advancements of technology that you could do. Right?
Yeah,
you could
absolutely.
Cure hunger. You could, if you have this type of energies and propulsions and you'd be able to give hydro and power endlessly with no problem to people, you would save so many people's lives and you'd have so many people not living in hardship.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think it goes back to what Greer was saying on his documentary. It's the same exact thing you're saying now, how like literally so many people's lives can be saved just in terms of medical and clean water and access to resources and transportation and like all the things. Yeah.
Well, and greed is one of those things. Are we going to choose greed or are we going to choose, wisdom and be better people and evolve? And I hope that I think the average person, I do truly believe wants that. It's the military industrial complex that I believe that holds us down, that we're not be able to achieve that.
Yeah, I
really
agree.
Blame individual people. I believe industries that people are aligned to or people have to work for, but overlarging industries with a very small group that are spearheading it. I blame them because they do know to some degree, or they know what they're doing and they're not making it accessible to everybody.
And that's a crime against humanity, like literally.
Horrible.
I feel like.
Yeah, we live in a world with so many billionaires that there's no need for all of them. There's no problem making money, I don't think, whatsoever. But I think that there is a place where if we're hoarding wealth and we're looking at the average amount of people are suffering, it's very different.
Right. The fact that like there's 2% of the people on the planet that have like all this money and they're hoarding it. Like they just keep making their pockets fatter. And it's like the rest of us, they're still scrambling around trying to like make ends meet. And it's just a crazy idea. I really hope that we can get past it. I really hope that like we can come to a place of like unity. And I guess I'm going to go into like a little hippie moment right here, but like, I really think that we're all one, you know what I'm saying? Like when you break it down and you zoom out from the micro to the macro, I mean, we're all one. And it's like the fact that we're warring with each other and drawing lines in the sand and hating somebody because they're on the other side of it. It's just insane to me. Like, I don't know. I just wish we can get past it. Like, can't we all just get along? Like, I know that sounds silly, but it's like for real.
No, I agree. It's like I think I always say this, there are a lot of good people in the world. There's a lot of bad people in the world. I think there's a very small percentage of evil people in the world, and good people can become bad and bad people can become better people and become good. So, and I think Yeah, I think it's a very small percentage that we have to deal with that are evil, but they're obviously not the easiest to deal with.
Yeah.
But I think it is a choice. And once we all wake up and choose that and stop realizing that we have to, why are we fighting with each other? It's so stupid. It's just propaganda that's pitting us against each other. It's
Right.
actually not one another. We all would generally, we might have some similarities and some differences, but we can learn to get along. And we always have before, right? There wasn't such a discrepancy, and propaganda has really pushed us apart I would say in the most recent years and recent decades. So I think we have to come back to a place where we stop pointing at each other, and maybe we start pointing at the military industrial complex for
real.
And propaganda and corporations for doing what it's doing to us instead of pointing at each other. And the day that we decide to do that and we bond as people, it's going to be a very scary time for the other side.
There was that ant that stood up to me.
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. One ant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boss, they're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
Well, how about this?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have a question that we ask of all of our guests, and usually I wait till a little bit later on to ask it, but I'm being called to ask it now because of what we just talked about. So, Chrissy, what would you say your greatest hope for the future of humanity is?
Well, it's such a nice question.
Thank you.
Again, I think what I was just saying, I hope that we learn how to not live in this gender, war that we're in, I think, which is so stupid. And my theory on that is that the reason why we have a gender war is that it's easier to keep men and women apart than working together, because if they work together, they might overthrow something, overcome things. So it's easier to keep them at odds. So I hope we get through our gender war in the West as much as we're going through this now, but also just in general, that we get through this and people start looking at each other as human beings and as individuals, and realizes that we have a lot of differences. And that's what makes us so interesting and special, is that we have differences, but that also means that's why we are so similar. And the one thing we have common is being human. So if we can understand that we have differences and respect them and move on and know that and accept it, then I think we'll live in a better place. And I really do think it's as simple as that. Most people are going to hear this and be like, oh, Chrissy, like so lolly-dally, so easy. And it's like, well, no, I think we make it complicated. It's actually just as simple as that. It's just respect each other, be kind, be good people, treat people the way you want to be treated. It's everything we learned in elementary school.
Yeah, literally. And I know that a lot of people do share those same sentiments. They're like, I just hope that we can be peaceful. I just hope that we can all just stop fighting with each other and realize that, like, we all have basic needs that need to be met. And, we're all just on a rock that's spinning through space. And, like, why can't we just be cool about it in the process, So it's like, I really do wish we can have that, like, kumbaya moment. I know it sounds really hippie-ish, but I don't care. I mean, it's true. It's like, I don't know. So that was a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for answering that. I appreciate it. I'm also feeling drawn to ask you, are you an experiencer yourself?
I've had what I think was a UAP experience. I've seen something.
Sharing?
Yeah. I saw something with an ex-boyfriend in a backyard where I wasn't sure what the heck it was. If it had it was like a daytime, like a comet meteor. I don't know what the heck it was, but it was flying in, but it had like this little tiny smoke trail on the back of it, but it had like a really, really, bright front that was like almost like a fireball. And so more than likely it was environmental, but we looked at it and we were like, I was like, what is that? And a military jet flew over his house to go look at it. And then we realized that if it flies back on the same path, it was a military jet and it flew back on its same path, coming back to where it was going, where it first landed. And so we knew that it was something. So atmospheric for sure could have been, and it obviously was unidentified. But I think we're actually probably majority, all of us are experiencers to some degree. We just don't know it. I'm like,
interesting.
And I think in how people perceive it, right? It's such an interesting word, being an experiencer, because I think that most of us are. We've seen things that we can't identify or explain. Yeah. Most people just poo-poo it away. And that's the challenge, is don't poo-poo it away when you're like, because you're scared of the ridicule. It's like, no, that's okay. And I think we're moving into that space where people are believed. And I do think we have a challenge with that too, is that most people don't believe each other. And so once we get over that hurdle as well, where we actually believe people, because I do think majority of people don't lie. I think when they're having some type of experience they can't explain, it's hard for them to even talk about it. So I think from there, we have to believe people.
Right. What are your thoughts around telepathy? Like, are you familiar with the telepathy tapes? Because I feel like telepathy and psionics kind of became really popular around the same time. And then you got the telepathy tapes, and you have Jake Barber's Skywatcher team that came out. And I don't know what your thoughts are around CE5. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, I think telepathy is something that has been around around kings and queens, right? This is not a new thing. The conversation of telepathy and it's the ability to be able to do it is stem back from such long roots. So I think that, yes, telepathy for sure is. We see this conscious connection that we have with one another, right? We do share each other's thoughts sometimes. When you hang out with your best friend, you know what they're thinking and saying. There is this energy connection that we have. And that is its only form of telepathy. The telepathy tapes, though, I've listened to them. I've talked to Kai Dickinson separately.
Oh, nice.
I think it's fascinating. What is happening with the telepathy tapes. The only thing I don't agree with that, and this isn't anything that's done in science, if anyone is faking something, and it might be even or smudging some of their results to make it look better than what it is, then it doesn't do us well for anybody, right? It doesn't help any of us. So that's the case where we have to look at. But, if one person is doing that, and we have multiple children that are nonverbal autistic that are showing it, there's something there. And I do truly think it's unbelievable and exciting. I've actually, there's one of the children that live in Toronto that is part of the telepathy tapes, and I would love to meet them. And I've been meaning to try to contact them to chat with them, to do an interview with them.
That would be awesome.
Oh yeah. I think I love what they're doing.
Let's manifest that for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm but I appreciate that. That people are doing work in this, because I think telepathy for sure is a thing. We see we see these conscious connections, and I think we're all have the ability to do it. And that maybe is something that we were able to do way before, something that we decided that we wouldn't use, like synesthesia. Synesthesia was something that we stopped using, right? But everyone has, and I know people that have synesthesia to this day still too. And I know two people that specifically, one uses it for music and one uses it related for defense work. And so synesthesia, is something that they, was pushed out of us or bred out of us over a period of time because we didn't end up using it. So telepathy can be very similar to that as well. But they consider synesthesia as being neurodivergent, right? It's part of a neurodivergency. It's how the brain is wired a little bit differently, which I think is fabulous.
I find it interesting. Yeah, I think it's a really cool, because you mentioned musicians, and I could think of two musicians right off the top of my head that have it: Billie Eilish and Aurora. They both have it. Billie says that she sees, certain colors are associated with certain numbers, and then when she's writing music, it's she sees it in a different way. And it's just, I find neurodivergence in general really amazing, and I feel like neurodivergency is human evolution, in real time. That's how I feel about it. I think the neurodivergent population is amazing. I'm so grateful for them.
Yeah, I'm No, I agree with you. I'm neurodivergent myself. I have dyslexia, but I'm like high functioning. I'm like, but my dyslexia, I can read and write. But I still have challenges for sure. In many different ways. It just takes me longer than it would somebody else. But I know other people that are dyslexic that like can't spell whatsoever, are horrible at writing. So it takes me time. Thank God I have a great editor at the Debrief, but it's
You're
true.
funny.
And well, it's true. It's like, but I think that my dyslexia has always been my superpower my entire life. Yeah. The way that I see the world and the way that I view the world from different perspectives for sure has been my, very much my superpower. And if someone told me we're going to take your dyslexia away from you, I would be like, no,
man,
please
that's
don't.
mine.
This is who I am. Like, this has made me who I am. And I would never want to be anything different than that. So, but again, like, I think that everyone has their own capabilities. I just, my dyslexia was something that I had to, when I was really young, I had to learn how to survive, right? You sink or swim when you had it. And so my choice was to swim.
Well, I'm so glad you took them strokes, baby.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you did that. And thank you for all the stuff that you're doing. I find all of the work that you're doing truly amazing, truly inspiring. I love to see women in this field because there's not that many of us. It's a pretty male-dominated field. Just like pretty much everything else is. But anyways, so I feel like every time I can connect with another UFO girly, I always get like really excited. So thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you for doing this. I know, because it's true. There's like such a great conversation and so many different topics.
Yeah, I feel like I could keep talking to you forever, but I keep looking at the clock like I want to respect your time. I don't want to go over, but I feel like I could keep talking to you for hours. Like, I feel like I want to ask you about what you think of soft disclosure in media, since you're so involved in media and making movies and podcasts and all this stuff. Like, I feel like soft disclosure is 100% present in Hollywood.
Well, and I'll say that quickly. I do. First of all, I don't know unless we're looking at things that have been defined as facts. These are things that I'm learning, but my opinion based on this was that there might be, like, when I look at it from a public relations perspective, I always do the same thing where I'm like, that's too, like, there's too much of a synchronicity there.
Yep.
To not be able to softly add something into a plot line. And we've known that, like, DARPA has worked with Hollywood. We know that all of these industries have worked with Hollywood. Maybe not DARPA specifically, but we know the military industrial complex, it's had its hand in Hollywood. Like, going back to the Condom Report, one of the recommendations was to use Disney to be able to push their messaging and their disinformation campaign and their discrediting around UFOs. We don't have full proof that Disney did run anything.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's literally written in the CIA report.
Those buggers, man, those buggers.
Yeah. So we know right there. It's like, well, we know that the CIA recommends to use the media industry as a conduit to be able to push information or discredit things, right, in a mass perspective. So it's not too far off to think that maybe they have. The question is again, how much do they know and what are they hiding from us? And again, that's what we're all fighting to know, because we know that they know something and we want to know how much. Yeah.
I think the last thing I'll say on this topic is, like, I feel like Steven Spielberg specifically is somebody that's like really cued in. He worked with Jacques Vallée when he did his Close Encounter movies. I feel like there was a lot of truth in that. And he's coming out with a new movie that originally he called The Dish, but now it's called Disclosure. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to that movie because his movies always seem to be spilling some kind of tea, and I'm sloppy like that. I like it. I'm messy. Thank you so much, Chrissy. Is there any last pieces of advice or things that you'd like to say before we close out our show today?
No, it's it. Just keep being curious. That's for sure. And thank you for having me. It's such a wonderful interview.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Anytime you'd like to come back on, I would love to have you. And for our audience, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and sticking around. Please do us a favor and smash that like button, click subscribe, ring our little notification bell, drop a lovely comment down below, and share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the good word. The way I close out my show, I'll show you. I do a quick little thing, and you're invited to join me if you want to. If you don't, you don't have to. I do much love, peace, and namaste. Are you open to joining me? I'll do it slow. Okay. Much love.
Much love.
Peace.
Peace.
And namaste.
Namaste.